This chapter will look at events and promotions, and we're going to start with a couple of overview topics, and then I want to give you a really brief discussion of the different types of events and promotions that typically will be handled by a public relations representative. But I'm not going to go into an astronomical amount of detail. That is something that I think you could get quite a bit of information from through reading. And once you decide what you think your client could use most effectively, you can go into the textbook and sort of look at the lists and options for each of the types of events that you choose and use it almost like a checklist. So we will look at some of these, but again, it'll be just a quick overview as opposed to a full in-depth exploration of each of those topics. Now, meetings and events are really a vital public relations tool. Oftentimes we talk about the digital tools that we can use, the synchronous and asynchronous options that are available via the internet. So we look at things like social media, websites, using digital press releases and news through radio and television. These are all asynchronous opportunities and some synchronous, but all based in digital representation of information. However, there are moments in which a face-to-face interaction is necessary. So we're going to look at the vital area of public relations, which are these meetings and events that provide an audience with the five senses. So oftentimes when you think about meeting, and in your case, meeting in an online class, there are opportunities that wouldn't exist if you were face to face. The same thought, though, can be considered when thinking about what opportunities occur when you are face to face as opposed to just digitally meeting or asynchronously meeting, which means meeting on your own time. That would be things like email or text message. So getting into a face-to-face interaction provides opportunity to communicate in a way that doesn't exist in a digital forum at this moment. Even when you use things like Google Hangouts or Skype, there are other opportunities that exist. There's a different feeling that occurs when you meet face-to-face. However, detailed planning and logistics are honestly essential for effective meeting and events. So there are necessities to a meeting and an event that may not occur in a digital forum. So let's look at some of those types. For example, meetings are very popular, and oftentimes your PR group and or yourself will be the one that needs to organize that meeting. And you have to consider all of these factors here. And depending upon the purpose of the meeting, location may have to be determined. You may have to send out either digital or formal invitations. You may need to get a speaker for that group. Maybe it is not the kind of meeting that is just hosted by, say, the CEO and or a group leader. Maybe you actually have to have a speaker. It's a little bit of a bigger group. And you may even need to provide meals. So group meetings have logistics, and you have to consider what facility you choose and how it needs to be set up. If you've ever taken a public speaking class, you know that the venue, the place that you are submitting the speech, that you are providing the presentation, that's going to matter. Are there digital tools you need? Do you have a very large room with a very small group of people? Or do you have a huge group of people with restrictions in how many seats can be available? So there are all these things that you need to consider. And your text goes over these almost in a list format and says what you need to do in terms of lighting and charts and monitors and projectors and such. So that's meetings. Banquets might be a little different. Typically they're larger, often elaborate affairs that require extensive advanced planning. So not only do you have to determine logistics of the area itself, but timing, and there's often a team of people that will work to put the banquet together as opposed to one or two people. Receptions and cocktail parties are typically a bit smaller, not always, but typically, and the focus should be on the interaction, not on a big presentation. So it should be the mingling, the communication that occurs in a more interpersonal aspect as opposed to a big presentation. And advanced planning and logistics are definitely required in this as well as the other ones. Receptions, cocktail parties, there's all these planning things that go into it. You have to consider whether you're going to do a bar, and is the bar going to be paid for by the corporation or is it going to be cash? How are you going to stop and start the party, and so on. So there's all those things. There's legal things that go with that as well. Open houses and plant tours are other options depending upon the needs of your client. Does your client have a reputation that they want to connect with their audience? Do they want their audience to not feel like this company is this nebulous big picture out there and instead is more intimate than they might have originally felt? I know that Budweiser in St. Louis does free tours all the time in order to create that sense of connection. They do require thorough planning and routing and a very careful handling of visitors, training of all personnel who will come in contact with those visitors, because it needs to be smooth. Keep in mind that when you do a plant tour or an open house, your goal typically is for your audience to understand the process more clearly and to create some form of connection with your audience that may not exist in any other way. An intimacy, so to speak. You're showing the inner workings of your business. So in order to make that a positive experience, a lot of connecting and understanding is required between both those that are visiting and those that are training or managing the groups as they go through. Conventions are another great one. Conventions, I personally love conventions because they offer you an opportunity to explore a variety of topics specific to your area of interest. So typically this is not just about one company, although companies can sponsor a convention in some way. Usually it's about a topic area. So I know that some of you may be thinking about a digital corporation, let's say Apple or Android or Samsung specifically with Android. You may want to attend or participate in or sponsor a convention specifically related to technology. So again, it's not a Samsung convention or an Apple convention, although those do exist. Most of the time it's about a convention related to a topic, and then the companies would support those conventions. And again, you have to work on planning. This takes a year, almost a year, sometimes months, but typically a year or more to plan, and you have to consider all of these things. Conventions have oftentimes large meetings, cocktail parties, receptions, tours, and banquets all together. So these previous things that we've talked about as individual events, conventions have all of those. In many cases, they even have outside entertainment. I went to a convention once that was in Orlando. It was specific to online learning, and while the convention had all of these things, the large meetings, the banquets, the receptions, the tours, they also offered opportunities for the group that attended the convention to go visit Disney World during, I think it was during the Mickey's Halloween Explanza or whatever it was called. And that is something that oftentimes happens when they hold conventions in places like Orlando or Las Vegas and so on. It does require the skills of professional managers who can juggle multiple events and meetings over a period of several days. Typically, these are anywhere from 2 days to a week. So it just depends on the nature of the convention. Trade shows are similar in that they do host a variety of different companies, and they are designed to allow for variety, similar to what a convention would. But a convention oftentimes is centered around learning new things and understanding concepts better, whereas a trade show is centered around exploring new products, maybe even purchasing things. If you've gone to any of the trade shows in the area, maybe it was the Home and Garden trade show, or maybe it was a car trade show, or Working Women's Survival Show, or family shows. Those are all trade shows. And oftentimes they are designed specifically for maximum visibility in their booths. So you would purchase a booth as a PR rep, you would purchase a booth for your company, and then you would try to encourage and provide social contact with your target market. Because let's say you go and purchase a booth for the Working Women's Survival Show, you know who your target market is. You are not going to purchase a booth if your target market is not a group of women, usually ages 20 to 65. So you want to keep that in mind. You only want to purchase those booths because they can be expensive, upwards of $50,000 depending upon the nature of the trade show. You want to keep in mind who your audience is and only purchase that booth if it really is going to make a difference. You also want to attract some journalists depending upon whether you're releasing product information or a new product, and allow organizations, the booths themselves will allow your organization to demonstrate your products, and sales representatives to directly talk with potential customers, where that's a little bit more difficult if you were, say, passing out a brochure or sending out mailers or producing a commercial. It's more interactive. It requires active engagement. So trade shows do use exhibit booths to the most effective manner. They also typically offer press rooms and media relations, so your PR group is going to need to consider that. Prepare a media kit like we sort of spoke about during the media section, the mass media section, and work on media relations before the show ever starts. So these are some things to keep in mind about trade shows. Now, in addition to this, we also have something called promotional events. Oftentimes, corporate sponsors will create another type of event where they're trying to create or establish or re-establish brand identity. The beginning of your book, they talk about Mr. Bubble and how he created the 50th birthday, and that was a new identity for that particular corporation. Maybe you have seen revamps of products. I know Domino's did a big thing a couple of years back that revamped how they were perceived based on some negative feedback. So it can establish that brand identity. I know the Olympics is one of the world's most prestigious corporate sponsorships, where a brand will try to connect themselves, like Gatorade or Coca-Cola or McDonald's will try to connect themselves with that particular group, like the Olympics. Those are things to consider. How appropriate is your company to that particular event? For me personally, I think McDonald's supporting the Olympics is strange. However, they do it without focusing on the food, which is interesting. They focus on the brand itself, the feeling of the corporation, the personality of McDonald's, as opposed to the food itself. So that's something to think about. Oftentimes you will see during promotional events celebrity appearances. You have to determine which, quote, personality fits that particular product or situation. Prominence of that celebrity is a news value, so it is an easier way, an expensive way, but an easier way to draw in journalists and other media relations groups. So bringing in a celebrity is valuable. However, consider how much that person will cost and whether or not they fit the bill. I mean, you could range anywhere from a couple $100s for an old school C-level actor all the way up to $200,000 for somebody who is much more prominent and present right now, or more than that, just depending upon the group. So you have to consider whether that value outweighs the direct cost and whether they apply to your company or not. Also consider promotional event logistics. So event organizers should brainstorm ideas and perform plans that are creative as well as realistic and practical, and that's something you want to consider. Does your client have the funds they need in order to put on this promotional event? You don't want to have a brand new startup company that has very little funding offering a promotional event that will cost them $500,000. It's not possible. It's not doable. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Realistic and practical, but also creative, and that can be difficult. You have to use your skills pretty clearly. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of all the various types of events and meetings and programs that can be offered, and it gives you a good starting place for determining what would be best for your client in terms of keeping their client present in the target market and using the meetings or tools or events or what have you in their most effective manner. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you on the discussion board.